It's Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a good one out there. Good show coming up today. Velle E Neal III will join me here in just a little while to talk a lot of Vikings, still kind of like dealing with the residue of the end of that season. Lavelle's got some pretty big opinions on what the Vikings should do at quarterback. Maybe not too dissimilar from my opinions on that, but it was good to kind of talk through it with somebody else. You can read his column on the same subject, by the way, today in your Star Tribune newspaper or at startribune.com. Won't spoil it. You'll have to listen a little bit further into the show or go read it to get the full scope of it, but you'll want to check it out because it was a good discussion. He and I also got into some Twins stuff, a little Joe Mauer Hall of Fame stuff, where that's tracking with just a couple weeks left before we find out for real whether Joe Mauer has made it into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Looking pretty good for Mauer right now. And we had a wild thought at the end of our chat as well. Got with Lavelle in the studio yesterday. That was fun. Hadn't had him in the studio at the Star Tribune for a while, but like I told him when we record, I always feel like the chemistry is a little bit better when we are face to face. The remote stuff works just as well. But I like being able to get in there and see those guys and be able to kind of talk across the way instead of just across the computer screen. So we've got a TV update at the end of the show. First, though, what I miss, I want to start Wolves. They've passed the test. Let's just say that they have passed the test. We've been talking for a while. You know, I think this is my tendency, and this is maybe Minnesota sports tendency, right? When things are going really well for a team, which for the better part of this season, they've been going as well as you could want them to go for the Timberwolves. But they got to this stretch 15 games ago where you're like, okay, they've been playing really well. I think their record at that point was 17-4, but they're going into this stretch where it's like, okay, 16 straight games against teams that at that time had 500 or better record, 11 of those 16 games on the road. And you looked at it and you said, man, if there's going to be any slippage in this season, we're going to find out right now. If there's going to be any kind of question about how good this team is, we're going to find out about that right now, because that is a pretty big gauntlet. That's not like, you know, that's not the toughest gauntlet you ever will face, but that's a pretty big stretch. 11 out of 16 on the road, all of them against teams that can win on any given night. No rebuilding teams, no tanking teams, a lot of really good teams in there. So far in that stretch, they are 15 games into this 16-game stretch. They got one more tonight at Boston. Terrible circumstances for that one. Back-to-back. They can't fly until today because of weather in Boston, so they're flying in day of game on a back-to-back after last night's game in Orlando. But they've already passed the test. I want to see something tonight. I want to see an effort tonight. They got a lot of strikes against them, so I'm not saying they got to win this game, but I'd like to see an effort still. These guys are professionals. But even if they lose this game, best team in the West against the best team in the East, which is a fun kind of thing to think about anyway. Even if they lose this one, they're 9-6 on this stretch right now. 9-6. When it started, I was like, man, if they can just be 500 during this stretch, I will count that as, hey, that was pretty good. That's good enough. They're going to finish over 500 no matter what. The 9-7 is the worst they're going to do in this stretch. Could go 10-6 if they can pull this one out tonight. 9-7, though, is going to be the worst they're going to do. They're still going to have the best record in the West once this stretch concludes. And get this. It's not like the rest of the schedule is a cakewalk, but relatively speaking, it kind of is. I looked at Tankathon, one of my favorite sites, gives you a good, I used to look at Tankathon to see where the Wolves were going to fall in the lottery order, right? Like that's kind of what I'm used to looking at it for that and for other teams. Now you look at it and you see the remaining strength of schedule for every team in the league, including the Timberwolves. Right now, even with this game at Boston tonight, which beefs up their strength of schedule, even right now, they have the second easiest remaining strength of schedule of any team in the NBA. Only one team has an easier remaining strength of schedule than the Wolves, that being Orlando, who they just played last night and beat handily. We'll talk about that in a minute. So even after that, second easiest remaining strength of schedule. That tells you that the Wolves, if they continue to take care of business, if they don't fall into those same traps they were falling into last year where they were having a hard time beating the bad teams, that's not been a problem this year. If they can take care of business against the okay teams, the bad teams, they still got like 4 games left against Portland this year, a bunch of other games against teams that are not really contenders right now. If they can take care of business there, get to the playoffs. I know it's a long ways down the road. I'm not trying to rush through this season. You should savor the next 3.5 months. But if they can kind of do that, the schedule is favorable. That's what I'm saying. The schedule from now until the end of the regular season, by and large, is favorable. They do not have a 16-game gauntlet quite like the one they just went through. They've got some tough stretches, of course, in there. They got some road trips. They got some other things. But by and large, relative to the rest of the league, they have a very easy schedule, a very forgiving schedule the rest of the way. So you look at that and you say, okay, they've got that schedule and they're capable of playing the way they played last night. Coast to coast win over Orlando, which is a good team this year, by the way. Orlando is a above 500 team, a team that is unexpectedly good in the Eastern Conference. Wolves were up by 30 on the road at halftime in that game. Cruised to the win. The only complaints people had that I saw on social media was that Chris Finch left his starters in until there were like 3-4 minutes left in the game. You know what? You want to make sure that one's tucked away because you know that the next one coming up against Boston's tough. You don't want any kind of slippage. You don't want to have to put your starters back in cold 2 minutes later. So I get it. He's probably watched enough of his team. He probably knows enough Timberwolves history to know that no lead is really truly secure. So I didn't mind that. I maybe having some guys a little bit fresher for tonight would have been nice. But you know what? You get the win you've got, and don't worry about the rest. So Wolves cruise over Orlando. Here was Finch, by the way, after the game, talking about some of the keys to what got it done.
I thought Jaden was really, really good tonight on Banchero. Rudy was really, really good on the glass, and Cat thought through a lot of matchups when he was on smalls and stuff like that, did a really good job. And also, of course, was the difference maker in the game offensively in the second quarter.
Another one tonight, like I said, at Boston. Another kind of measuring stick game, even with all the kind of challenges facing them with the travel, the schedule, things like that. Regardless of what happens tonight, though, they have passed this test, and now it is on to the rest of the season. Quick before the break, too, Gopher women got a big win last night in Michigan. First time they've won at Michigan in about a decade, and they won handily, won by like 16 points. I thought it was cool, too, after the game. I was just looking at social media. It's actually how I found out they won the game. I'm sure I would have found out another way momentarily or not too long after that. But Lindsey Whalen, former Gophers coach, tweeting, "Let's go, huge win," on top of the on the X, the post on X about that road win from the women's basketball account on that site. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like, maybe not unexpected. She still has great ties to this program, still has great caring for the players and the team. So Lindsey Whalen tweeting that, saying that about that team. Big win for the Gophers. Want to talk more about them soon on an upcoming show. Gotta get Kent Youngblood on a show to talk about where this team is headed. But a much more interesting year for both the Gopher women and the Gopher men. And I think we'll be talking a lot more about both of those teams this winter than we did last winter.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
Got Velle E Neal III with me today, Star Tribune columnist in studio today, Velle. This feels good. We haven't done this for a while. It's kind of hard to make our schedules match up. So usually when we do this, it's over Zoom. But in real life right now, IRL, as the kids say.
How about that? And this is the most people I've seen in this office and in the sports department in a while. So it's good to see faces instead of talking to them over the phone or talking to them on Zoom. So, and get a chance to sit in this nice, well-furnished podcast studio at the Star Tribune headquarters.
It is nice. I like it. They revamped it several months back, and I've been making a concerted effort to get in here more since then. But we're not just here to talk about how nice it is to see each other. We're here to talk about a bunch of stuff. Vikings quarterbacks are on your mind. Maybe a little baseball stuff, too, because I can't let you ever get out of here without talking some Twins and some baseball. And I've got a stray wild thought for you. Maybe something else if something else comes to your mind. But Vikings. I've talked a lot of Vikings the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, last couple of years, whatever you want to, however you want to define it. It becomes a heavy subject here. Quarterback is a huge thing this offseason. We all know that. Where are you at with what they should do? What are you writing for? I believe your Wednesday column that people will now be able to see.
I think at this point, considering the state of the franchise, the quarterback, Kirk Cousins, coming back from a serious Achilles injury, and this roster just having so many holes on it. I mean, even if you say you sign Kirk, you're not going to bounce back to 2022 and go 13-4. Well, that was a special year because you were 11-0 in one-score games, which was historic.
Yes. It's an outlier year. Everybody knows it. They know it.
Historic is not sustainable.
Yes, absolutely. Good phrase. I like that.
So you put in all that. You still need secondary help. Pass rush still needs to be improved. Running game needs to be addressed. You probably need a third receiver. To me, it's time to hit the reset button. The competitive rebuild didn't work. Kwesi inherited some collateral damage from the previous regime.
Yes.
He's had to work through. He's out of that now. Now he should start trying to build up from scratch here. So reset, get a young quarterback in here on a rookie contract so you can use the money to keep a Danielle Hunter, extend to Justin Jefferson, and try to add talent elsewhere to make this a more competitive team. Sorry, I'm pounding the table.
That's okay. It's okay. I wish you had a shoe. I wish you had a shoe to pound on the table. So you're on team get a new quarterback, but don't bring back Cousins.
Yeah.
You don't want to live in both worlds like they've been living.
I don't think you can straddle like that. And I was reading a story about this the other day. The number 2 quarterback on a team, it's hard for them to develop because the number 1 quarterback is running with the ones in practice all the time. So in addition to that, you're not playing games and you're not getting reps with the ones.
Not getting the reps. Good point.
While you're burning your time on the rookie contract.
Yes.
Now, if you could tell me it's just for a year, maybe I could settle for that.
Kirk Cousins ain't signing for 1 year. That's the problem.
In most situations, what's going on with Jordan Love that's just rare. No one thought he was going to step in and throw for 4,000 yards.
He's okay, by the way. He's not great. He's okay.
He threw 4,000 yards.
He's fine. He's the next Kirk Cousins. I love it. I love that for the Packers that they have their Kirk Cousins now.
Okay, I like where you're coming from on that. Being a Bears fan, and I want the Packers to fail at everything they do.
Yes,
but the fact is, he did put us with decent numbers this year. He did.
He had a really good second half. I agree with that.
So, having a guy simmer for 3 years and plugging in him and playing him, I just don't see it. When you can allocate those resources differently to build a roster, to build a balanced roster, and fill in some holes here, man. So I'm like, cut the cord with Kirk. Now this is a good time to do it. Coming back from a serious injury, you don't know. Even though he talks like everything's gonna be fine, you don't know at age 36 how he's going to respond. Is he going to have the mobility of Sam Bradford behind?
Well, he's never been the most mobile quarterback, but you're right. He can at least. He's not a complete statue like Bradford was at the end.
Correct. It would help if he had a better offensive line. He still needs some. I think the center of their line needs addressing.
Yes.
So it just seems like it's a good time to pull the plug, drain the swamp, flush the toilet, whatever you want to call it. That's what the Vikings need to do.
Now, there's still going to be some temporary pain, even if they do move on from him, because there's the salary cap stuff, the dead years they added to it. If they take it all at once, which they would have to unless they do some kind of cap gymnastics, it's like it all hits like $28 million would hit on next year's cap. It kind of hamstrings you at least for a year. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that, you're like, well, wouldn't you rather pay Kirk Cousins to play for you than have him count on your cap not paying for you? But the problem is, I think you addressed it already, the problem is the ideal situation is, I think Andrew Kramer and I talked about it earlier this week, the ideal would have been if he would have signed the contract you wanted him to sign last year, which was guaranteed through 2024. Then you could say, okay, we got one more year at Kirk Cousins. They're going to stay competitive. You had this year, which didn't turn out the way they wanted, but still gave them this kind of window of opportunity to take a pick. at number 11, 11 gives you the opportunity to not have your pick of quarterbacks, but lets you get in the conversation if you want to move up, or someone just might organically fall to you. That would have been the perfect scenario if they would have signed him to the contract they wanted to sign him to, instead of him, as we reported, wanting that guaranteed for 25 as well. Now, if he comes back and he says, I want 24 and 25, that's hard, right? You can't. I just don't think you can live in both of those worlds. It'd be a lot easier if you could say one more year of Kirk Cousins, but he's at a point where A, he wants some security, and B, he wants to know where he's going, and C, like, he's kind of playing for his final, like, long-term, multi-year contract probably at this point.
Which means that his agents are probably going to ask for 3 years, I would think. I think they're going to start with a 3.
And that's the problem. Like, in some team who's desperate might say, we'll give you, 3 years, and maybe the third year doesn't have full guarantees, but another team might make him an offer that's more attractive than what the Vikings are willing to do at this point. So it might not be all up to them in the end.
Right. And if you do sign Kirk, what are you getting for next year? How's the team?
What's your ceiling?
Yeah.
Yes.
Your ceiling is 10, 11 wins maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're not going to be able to move into the 49ers realm. They're not going to be moving into the Cowboys or the Eagles realm. So to me, you got to look at the totality of the roster and make a decision based on the status of your 55 or 56 man roster.
Yes. And the problem here is, and I think I want to hear what you think about this, but like, people have retroactively fallen in love with Kirk Cousins because of he got a good streak this year. He was playing well, and because of how bad this turned when he went out. Like, everyone's like, oh, the alternative is so bad, you got to bring back Cousins. Well, the alternative won't be what they were saddled with this year, right? Like, that's not the reality. And B, we've seen Kirk Cousins with better teammates when he's been younger and healthy. Their ceiling was not Super Bowl in any of those years either.
I also got to point out that this team started out 1-4 with Kirk.
Yes.
Before they kind of righted the ship and then he got injured. So everything wasn't going smoothly then. But of course, part of that was their realization that Alexander Mattison was not the running back answer.
No, that was a problem.
So, and my other issue here too is that Kwesi needs a good offseason. Like, he needs air to breathe.
Yeah.
It's really bad because he's come off of 2 underperforming draft classes, and here's my line in my column tomorrow, and a free agent foray this past offseason that produced more swings and misses than Joey Gallo.
Okay. Wow. He's not making contact like Joe Mauer.
Marcus Davenport, whiff.
Bad.
Byron Murphy, nah.
I like Murphy was okay. I give him a passing grade on that, but it wasn't a home run.
I think it would have been better off just bringing Pat Peterson back.
Maybe.
As it turns out.
Yeah.
Pat Pete's going to the postseason, baby.
He is.
So, and you got other things too. Daniil could walk.
Yes.
Wanham's a free agent, right?
Yeah. Davenport, too. Davenport's a free agent.
Harrison can retire.
Yeah.
Harrison Smith can retire.
Yeah.
So he's going to have a lot on his plate this year in terms of trying to put together a roster for next year. I'm just saying, giving $40 million to Kirk when you need to focus on other parts, I just don't think that's financially prudent.
There are people who will say, and I don't agree with this argument because you can't live this way, but there are people who will say, well, he hasn't drafted well the first 2 years. He's made the Addison pick seems like it's pretty good. A lot of the rest of the picks seem suspect.
Where is Lewis seen?
Why do you then trust him to make the right decision at quarterback?
That's a fair question, but if you're drafting 11th, it's a crapshoot. If you look at the last 3 to 5 years of all the quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, it was about 50-50 as far as hit or miss.
Yeah.
So it is a crapshoot, So, but they've got to get in that. They got to get in the game. They got to make a play here. So, and by then, I totally expect Michael Penix to be in the top 10.
Well,
because the Anthony Richardson bump.
Yes.
I didn't even know who the hell Anthony Richardson was a year ago at this time. He ended up being 4th overall.
Yes. These guys rise. Now, he didn't do himself a ton of favors. We'll talk about Penix in a minute. He didn't do himself a ton of favors against Michigan. That was not his best game. He could have helped himself even more and maybe hurt the Vikings' chances of drafting him even more if he had been lights out and they win that game. I don't think he wasn't bad, but that's just a good Michigan team. Some flaws were exposed there. Maybe the other piece of this that gives you some comfort is if you believe in Kevin O'Connell, he is going to have a heavy hand in selecting the quarterback of the future.
That's right. I'm going to make that point as well. I think the structure with KOC in charge, especially he can mold the quarterback in his own way here. He talked about how he appreciated how Kirk allowed him to coach him hard.
Yes.
But now he's got, this ball of clay he could just mold into the guy he wants to be. So from that teaching perspective, the Vikings are set up for success. So
Yeah.
and Kwesi and the Viking scouts were in attendance for the Gopher game against Minnesota when J.J. McCarthy was in town.
Michigan.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Michigan against Minnesota
Yes.
when they won 52-7.
Yes. Did they steal out their signs? I don't know if they did.
I don't know if that guy.
So okay, so now if you're lobbying for them to move on, doesn't necessarily mean you have to attach yourself to a name or a guy, but do you have preferences? Are there people that you would like to see them take a swing at more than others of the guys that will realistically be available? Like Caleb Williams not going to be available. Drake May not going to be available. The Daniels from LSU probably not available.
Probably
at that
not.
point.
Daniels could be in the top 5 before this is all over.
Yes.
There was a mock draft this morning that had Penix 10th. I was like, here we go.
I saw one where he was 8th.
I was like, here we go.
Yeah. I think USA Today he was 8th.
I think J.J. McCarthy will be in the first round for sure by the time the draft comes.
I don't like
he'll be mocked in the first round.
Yes, he's usually mocked in some already.
Yeah.
Then you got Bo Nix from Oregon.
Correct.
So who do you like? What's realistic of what you like?
It was realistic. Like I said, I'm a J.J. McCarthy guy.
Okay.
I think
What do you like about him? Talk me into him.
Okay, he's got an arm. He can make all the throws.
Okay.
His decision making is excellent. He could throw in the tight windows as he proved yesterday. So if you're NFL open, he can hit you. He's a very good athlete and is mobile. So he can escape pressure. That means he could throw off platform. And I like the fact that he meditates before every game.
Now, he didn't put up some of the quite the same gaudy numbers as some of these other people.
You got Blake Corum.
Yes, I was going to say, like,
the ball for
right. So that's where you have to decide. Like, you have to. That's where you really got to. These scouts, they don't look at necessarily the raw numbers. They don't necessarily look at every single route. There's probably like 20 or 30 plays or a handful of throws they want to see you make consistently, the processing. And that's where I don't drill down as hard on these guys.
That's why I talked to another football writer who talked to scouts from the team he covers, and they think that McCarthy's decision-making and his ability to get the ball off his hand is very, very good.
Okay.
And that's something that they were impressed with him. So
I like his mobility. I worry he's got a little Zach Wilson to him. We'll see. I don't know.
We'll see. It depends how much he can handle. And he played for a guy in Jim Harbaugh who's an offensive guy. And with San Francisco, Harbaugh used all kinds of different sets and had Colin Kaepernick performing at the highest possible ability. So, Bo Nix, it's weird. Because Penix and Nix both perplex me because I still remember watching Penix look horrible at Indiana.
Right.
I also remember that Bo Nix was the quarterback at Auburn that the Gophers beat in the Outback Bowl, which seems like 10 years ago.
It does. It wasn't 10 years ago, was it? It was
No,
5. It was
5.
4 years ago. The 2019 season.
Yeah,
So
it still seems like it was a long time ago.
It was before COVID. Anything that happens before COVID was a long time ago.
So it's going to be interesting how they evaluate the quarterbacks in this class because it's a better quarterback class than last year for sure.
Yes. Absolutely. And they like it. They like the class. The Vikings do.
At 11, they've got a chance to do way better than Jaron Hall and way better than Kellen Mond.
Yes. I agree with that. And I think we're probably aligned overall in our preferences. Like, I think my first preference would be if they could have Cousins for another year, kind of figure out how to keep him, kind of spread that dead money out and still be able to be effective next year without rushing this new guy in. Because it takes a while to learn O'Connell's system. Like, they all talk about how complex this is, how it's one of the hardest offenses. But
Joshua Dobbs got worse the more of the playbook
yes,
he learned.
It's like the more he learned, the worse he got. But that doesn't seem like it's going to be possible. That's not the contract Kirk Cousins wants. So if they can't make this match up in what they want and what he wants, my next preference is it's time to move on, like you say.
Yeah, I would take I think I would accept a year out of Kirk, but
yes,
I'm not going to say 2.
No,
Not when it's
not more than
time
2.
to develop your quarterback.
Not
here.
2, not 3. Yeah. Speaking of moving on, let's talk a couple more things before we go. What are you thinking about baseball wise? You got Mauer on the brain. There's nothing. The hot stove is like the pilot lights out. There's nothing going on for the Twins now.
Something that's going to be right up your alley takes
Yes.
place at 3:30 tomorrow.
Okay.
There's a hearing in Texas about
Yes.
the whole Diamond Sports deal.
Yes, that's a Wednesday hearing. Yes, Phil might be on later this week to talk about that too.
Yeah, and then there may be some clarity out of that.
Yes.
At that meeting because I talked to a Twins official today who said there may be something 48 hours down the pike here.
Okay.
That will clarify the television situation.
Intrigue.
So, I hope they figure out a way just to run it back one more year, and that gives everybody a chance to kind of be a little more measured in their approach for programming in 2025.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I think that would be best for everyone. I just talked to a person who's well versed in TV and programming. He was like, Netflix is the only streaming service that's making money. Major League Baseball needs to be careful with just thinking, oh, we'll just stream these games, because not everybody is making money that way. But I would say this: some of these streaming services are paying millions of dollars to actors and actresses that are running up their bills. All right,
right.
You don't have to do that with baseball games. You can just throw them on.
Right.
And the fact that they're not going to be blacked out, I think, is a great thing for the consumer.
Yes.
So it's just and plus, we're just in a weird period right now where it's more a la carte as far as watching what you want to watch. And I don't know if the younger fans want to deal with a 162 game schedule. I think they would get engaged in August and September and in the postseason. So if there's a way you can pick, well, not April, not May, but yeah, I'll pick up July, August, September.
Yeah.
You may have to split it up like that to make it sellable.
And there are some people that still want all 162, and that's always going to be available through your cable satellite package. But if you can figure out how to kind of slice it up a little bit more for those people who want to pick and choose, or who maybe just want to, hey, there's a game tonight that looks really good. Can I get that? What's the pricing model for that? How do I pay for that? I think that's interesting for the future. I think they got to figure this out, though. The biggest frustration last year was that there was no streaming option for the Twins. That the Wild and the Wolves. You say what you want about Bally Sports, their app is okay. It's a little it's been kind of rough in spots. They've had some problems with stuff, but it's by and large available that way, and that is enough. If the Twins go back to Bally this year, I'm 100% convinced it will at least include that element. It's got to, because that was the biggest frustration last year. Yeah,
it definitely was, and hopefully it can move forward in a better way here. And the Twins are going to enter the season with a little momentum, even though they said goodbye to Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda. There's still some momentum here from last year.
Sure,
with this young everyday lineup, and you have a guy who's your best version of an ace since Johan Santana, and Pablo Lopez, leading the rotation, and maybe one of the better closers in baseball in Joan Duran. This team's coming into the season with some juice. I expect them to make a couple moves before Twins Fest. And that may
Twins Fest is 2 weeks from now. That's crazy. 2.5 weeks.
I know. We got Diamond Awards on that Thursday, and then Twins Fest Friday, Saturday. And Twins Caravan starts that Monday. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah, so less than 2 weeks, man.
They're shortening the winter, which is kind of nice.
Hey, when I covered the Twins, I always loved getting through the holidays, because in my mind, mentally, I was like, I just got to get through a month, and then I'm in Florida, and then I can focus on baseball, and that's it. So I always like this time of year, because it tells me that camp is just right around the corner. We're
going to find out in 2 weeks too if Mauer made it, right? And it's tracking pretty well. The ballots that are in, he's at 80, low 80s, low to mid 80s right now, right?
Yeah, a few months ago, I was like, I think he's going to get in. I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure if he's going to get in on the first ballot. There's still some first ballot curmudgeons out there among the 400 and so BBWA voters. But he's done things that catchers have never done before in the game. The shocking thing in Phil Miller's story the other day was that only Bench and Pudge Rodriguez got in on their first ballot.
As catchers,
I was like,
that is
Yogi
amazing.
Berra didn't get in?
Right.
I was sitting there scratching my head over that one. So the fact that Mauer could join that group is pretty exclusive and pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. Final thought. I'm completely disinterested in the Wild unless we get to see the rookie goalie at some point here, because they're so hurt right now. They're banged up. They're just not interesting right now.
Aren't you happy to see Brock Faber on the ice for 30 minutes?
Yes, he's been great, right? That's great.
With Connor Bedard out, he's got a shot at the Calder now.
Yes, that's true. I care 0.0% about Marc-Andre Fleury moving into second place on the all-time wins list. That's the most overblown storyline of the entire season as far as I'm concerned. But I do care if we get to see Wallstedt, because that is the future. If you have him and you have Gustafsson locked up for a few years, and he's the Gus that you saw last year and that you saw at the beginning of the Hines regime here before Gus got hurt, that sets you up for success.
They also have other prospects. So the Wild are a top 10 farm system in the NHL, and some of these guys are getting close.
Yes.
They got 2 kids in Russia that could contribute as early as next year. Wallstedt's here. You got a couple other cats that could end up being impact players. I kind of want to see what that's looking like, but Bill Guerin likes to win. He doesn't like the tank. He's anti-tank. He's anti-rebuild. He's going to try to add what he can to this team. And the roster reflects that. It also reflects a bunch of guys who have no move clauses in their contracts, which gives them little flexibility if he does want to go on a full-blown teardown.
Right. So I'm disinterested right now. I had a little bit of interest at the start of the year. I'm disinterested. They still got the one more year after this where they got the Suter Parisi buyouts, and then after that they're kind of home free, and that's when they really start to have the flexibility and the freedom where some of those younger guys are here on those entry-level contracts and they can start spending in free agency again. I think it's got to bridge that gap, and it feels like this year the plan is falling short.
It's getting a little close, but it doesn't look good this year, especially with 97.
Yes.
It's getting abused across the league. That stuff got to stop. I don't like advocating violence, but someone's got to go down when they're taking cheap shots on Kaprizov.
And they went into the year with like $47 worth of like daily cap space. They can't even call up the players they want to call up usually.
You can't even pay for them to drive a car here.
No, they can't even get an Uber. Like an Uber would push them over the cap. Well, Lavelle's never over the cap. He's right here as always. Lavelle, appreciate it. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Good stuff from Lavelle. And like we talked about, Wallstead could make his debut as soon as tonight. Wild against Dallas, a rematch. Wild lost 4-0 the other day. In a slump right now. Too many guys hurt, including Philip Gustafson. Good time to try something new. See what this young goalie can do, because he is part of the future, part of where you can envision better days ahead for this franchise. It's not all hope is lost this year. Certainly, they rebounded nicely after the coaching change, but better days are ahead. I think you can say that. Even if you think they're okay right now, better days could be ahead, and Wallstead is a huge part of that. Let us now finish with the cooler. Big TV news coming this week. Some of it leaking already. There's a big hearing today, Diamond Sports bankruptcy hearing. A lot of it will determine kind of where this season is at for Major League Baseball and could influence what the Twins do this year. The Twins not under contract with anybody, but they could become part of kind of this last season of bundle with all these other teams if streaming rights are given to Sinclair, Diamond Sports, Bally Sports North, all the different subgroups of all this. Twins could wind up on that channel again this year, but they gotta find this all out soon. One reason to think this is only a short-term thing, even if they do that and don't go right away to MLB, is that according to the New York Post, Major League Baseball rejected a bid by Amazon. Amazon was trying to step in and help out Diamond Sports and Bally Sports by giving them what New York Post said is about $150 million quote lifeline extended to try to stream games through Amazon. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, and this was floated as an idea. Well, Major League Baseball has rejected this idea as something viable. Basically, the Post reporting that this was because Amazon and Diamond wanted this to be a multi-year partnership. Major League Baseball is like, nope. We don't want Diamond to be part of this long term. We'll cut our own deal with some of these streaming sites like Amazon if we want to do this down the road. So that's an interesting development in all this. Maybe Amazon is a way that Major League Baseball can make some money off of this at some point, bridge the gap between how much teams are getting now and how much they used to be getting from media rights, things like that. All of it bears watching, but that big hearing is today. Could get some clarity on the Twins' TV future this week. Phil Miller expected to join me on a show later this week, probably Friday's show, to give us some time to digest whatever happens today. And so that will be a show later this week, but we could get some Twins clarity as soon as today or tomorrow on what channel, how they'll be shown on TV this year. And the season really is only 2.5 months away. Like Val and I talked about, things are picking up quickly. Putting down quickly. That's the end of the show for today. I'm Michael Rand. Thanks for joining me. Back at it again tomorrow.